So I'm very pleased to welcome Jim Brighton, who will be talking with us about the Maryland Biodiversity Project. And he has been involved with this citizen scientist project from the very beginning. He is a native of the Eastern Shore. He was born and raised and currently lives in Cambridge with his family. He studied contemporary literature at Salisbury University, but decided to follow the family tradition of working on boats. He has spent the past 27 years working at Campbell's Boatyards in Oxford. During his time off from the boatyard, Jim runs the nonprofit Maryland Biodiversity Project, MBP, and works for the University of Maryland performing plant surveys. As co-founder and president of MBP, Jim spends time documenting the flora and fauna of Maryland, along with managing many of MBP's field projects. Jim was the University of Maryland's Chesapeake champion in 2017, and I think he really deserves to have that title every year since then, too, and the Maryland DNR Conservationist of the Year in 2019. Through his work on the Maryland Biodiversity Project, Jim promotes community science and education by helping to build a vibrant nature study community. Thank you very much for joining us.
All right, thanks everybody. It's great to be here. I haven't talked to the Maryland Native Plant Society about the Maryland Biodiversity Project in many years. Bill Hubick and I gave a presentation a long time ago in Kensington when we were doing pre-COVID stuff. But it's good to be here tonight. So basically what's happening tonight is I am going to tell everyone how they can use the Maryland Biodiversity Project to gain information about plants and other organisms that are in Maryland. Yeah. Bill and I co-founded MBP 14 years ago. So we've got a lot of data behind us now that we have a few years going on. So before I get going, I have a couple questions to ask the audience. How many mammal species are there in Maryland? Close, 104. How about birds? How many bird species have been seen in Maryland? 461. How about hummingbirds? How many hummingbird species have been seen in Maryland? 7. How about reptiles and amphibians? 98. How about fish? Judy, how many fish do you think have been seen? That's, if you don't talk, I'm going to call on people. Yep, 451. And there's probably a lot more than that. How about butterflies? Native pollinators, very important, right? How many butterflies? 154. How about moths? 2,785. And I think that number's low. I think we've added a bunch of species since I did this list a couple months ago. How about bees? 443. And I think a couple more have been added. How about earthworms? 39. How many are native? Not that many. It's less than 5. How about ferns? 72. How about orchids? 55. How about oaks? 22. Pretty good. How about mosses? 327. How about lichens? 464. And I just added a new one last year, so that's kind of cool. I like to do that exercise at the beginning to kind of get into the frame of mind that we really don't know what's going on, right? So my question is, how do we know what we're losing if we don't know what we have, right? So I'm going to say that again. How do we know what we're losing if we don't know what we have, right? And that's kind of what MBP is all about, right? We want to give everybody a chance to see what lives in Maryland, and not just native, but non-native, invasive. We need everybody to know what they're looking at, right? So imagine if you were walking in the woods and you see this plant and you're not sure what it is, but you look pretty closely and you see that it kind of has a bean type fruit. So you think maybe it's Fabaceae, right? So imagine if there was a place where you could go and you could get a list of all the beans and peas that are found in Maryland. And not just that, but county distribution for all the species. And not just that, but photos of all the species, right? That's the Maryland Biodiversity Project, right? Yeah. Does anybody know what that was? Goat's root. Goat's root. So this is a native tephrosia. Yeah, very cool bean. Beautiful plant. Pretty common in sandy habitats, Eastern Shore, Green Ridge areas, down along the Patuxent. So what's this? Folia, flora, something like that. Yeah. This is a very famous plant. This is part of the MBP mythology. This is the actual photo of the plant that Bill and I took 15 years ago that made us start MBP. We were walking in Severn Run Natural Area, just north of Annapolis, and I took a photo of this plant and got home and was trying to identify it. And what I found out was at that time, Maryland was one of the few states that did not have an up-to-date comprehensive plant checklist, right? At that time, Maryland was one of 2 states that didn't even have any species in the USDA plants database. Crazy, right? So that was a long time ago. Yeah. So Bill and I were talking and we were like, well, let's make one, right? Because as soon as you start doing stuff like that, the people that are really doing the work get upset and come and find you, right? So within a couple months, we had the idea of starting MBP, putting as complete as possible checklists as possible on the web for people to see. So we know what we have, right? Wes Knapp, very important person in Maryland, recent Maryland botany history. Wes published the checklist for the vascular plants of Maryland 4 years ago, I think it was. And as soon as we went live with that, he got in touch with me and said, you might want to look at this checklist that I'm working on. So this is important to make a comment on. Our plant taxonomy follows the Knapp checklist, right? So if you disagree with our taxonomy, you have to take it up with somebody else, which is important, right? Okay, so if you Google MBP, this is the homepage that you'll get. And basically, if you look on the left side there, we have numbers. So as of last night, and it might have changed by now, we had 22,158 species in checklists. 14,000 of those species have photos. We have over 1,300,000 photos on the site and almost 1,300,000 records in the database, right? Underneath that, we have our mission statement. The Maryland Biodiversity Project is a 501c3 nonprofit focused on cataloging the living things of Maryland. We promote conservation, science, and education by helping to build a vibrant nature study community. Now, the home page is too big to fit on one screen. So underneath this, we have a couple other things. There I am. Outdoors Maryland did a special on us where they interviewed me and a bunch of other people. It was really awesome. You can go and see the episode there. We have a blog where we talk about all different kinds of stuff. It's pretty cool. Field trips. We do open and free field trips throughout the year. We always say we're going to limit space, but we always accept everybody. So we never say no. Like I said, they're free and open to anyone who would like to come. And we hold those across the state. So it's a lot of fun. We do bird counts where you can go and look at our projects with birds. And finally, we have a recent discoveries where you can see all the new stuff that's added. And underneath that, we have announcements, right? So whenever we add a new species to the site, we put an announcement here. Anything that's relevant to MBP and to Maryland nature, we put here. Yeah, so we just added a new bee fly, a new fruit fly, a new longhorn beetles. You know, insects get a lot of love, right? The smaller majority, we add insects all the time. So up in the top here, home, checklist, sites, blog, explore, and more, right? So if you go to the checklist, we're going to talk about how you can explore info. So go to the checklist, you click that, and it will take you to the checklist page. And basically the way this is, it's a way to filter information on the site, okay? So if you click category, right, this gives you, you know, under vertebrates, you'll have your birds, your reptiles that you can click on. So let's look at plants, right? If you click plants, we just give you some basic groups that are the most popular on the site, right? So like if you click the iris family, it will give you a list of all the iris and iris allies that are found in the state. Okay, so there's 14 total. It's the blue-eye grasses and the irises and, you know, the non-native crocus. But say you want to go to taxa, right? So say you just want to see like Asclepias, milkweeds. You can type in Asclepias, it'll come up, you click that, and it'll give you all the milkweeds, right? But say you want to know all the milkweeds that are in Howard County, right? You can go to location, change county, click Howard, and get the list of Howard County, right? Say you live in Ellicott City, and you want to know only the plants that are found in the Ellicott City quad. You can go to quad, hit Ellicott City, and you get all the Ellicott City quad milkweeds. Yes.
The question was,
Yeah.
can you tell if they're native?
Not from this list, but you can click on all these and it will take you to a species page, right? I'm sorry, I should have made that more clear. All these things are clickable, right? So if you want to go to poke milkweed, you can click poke milkweed and it will take you to the species page. So this is all the milkweeds for the Ellicott City quad. You can go to year. And if you want to see how many milkweeds are found in the Ellicott City quad in 2025, you can click that, and we don't have any. The Ellicott City people were really shirking their duties on milkweeds this year. So more, you can type in a username. So if you wanted to see how many milkweeds you've seen, I don't come to Howard County that much. I live on the Eastern Shore, so fun. And you can get photos of all the milkweeds, right? Now, I want to say we have, over the last year, totally redone the website. The media section is the last page, and it hasn't been updated yet, but we're in the process of that. And this is the old look. What we've done is we've made the entire website now more mobile friendly. So if you're out in the field, you can actually, it looks really pretty and easy to use on your phone. This page, not so much though. So just, we will be getting to this soon, but we haven't, this is the very last thing we need to do. But if you click media, it will take you to photos of all the milkweeds, right? If you click map, you'll get a quad map of Maryland for whatever you're searching for. So this is the milkweed quad map. Darker the purple, the more records, right? So it tells you the 8 species in Beltsville, Ellicott City, Falls Church, in Washington East. Those are the quads that have the most diversity for milkweeds, right? So it's pretty interesting with the 14 species represented. So it gives you an idea of where it's a diversity map, right? It shows you where the most diversity for whatever you're trying to look for. So if you wanted to do birds, you could do that. If you wanted to do cicadas, mosquitoes, ferns. So you can do this, sort this however you want. We're just using milkweed as an example. Now, county list, once again, you get county list. If it's shaded dark green, that means we have a record in our database from that county. If we don't have a record, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's not there. It's just that we don't have a record. Yes.
The question was, when you select species to include, are they always wild or can they be from a garden?
So we try very, very, very hard to make sure that we have no cultivated or what's my word for livestock? Yeah, domesticated. Thank you. Domestic animals, cultivated plants are a no-no at MBP. So we really go out of our way to make sure that it's only wild stuff. Now that could be spreading non-natives, you know, it gets tricky. We could talk all night, native versus non-native. We did on our field trip. Remember that? Yes, ma'am.
The question was what
Yeah.
qualifies as a record in the
Yeah,
database.
yeah, I will get to that. So county let's see. Here we go. So I picked pink lady slipper because everybody loves pink lady slippers, right? They're beautiful. This is what our species pages look like. All species pages have the same layout, okay? So pink lady slipper, scientific name, the author of that sign, right, of the species. Underneath that, we have synonyms. So taxonomy is fluid. We do our best to keep up with as many synonyms as possible. If you find a synonym that we don't have that you would like to have on the site, shoot me an email. Underneath that, we have basic taxonomy from kingdom down to genus. We do subspecies and varieties as well, right? Underneath that, we have a photo and a map. We didn't have this map to begin with. We just had a county bar chart. People didn't like the county bar chart, so they wanted a map, so we added the map. The bar chart and the map are redundant. So, so Ayton was the person who named the species, right? So every species has an author, yeah. And we try to add the author for most organisms on the site. So underneath that, we have description, where to find in relationships. So I'm going to be straight up. We don't have this information for all 23,000 species because we work full-time jobs and have families, and our wives and families want us to spend some time with them. So we can't work on this 100% of our time. But for the most part, most of the popular species have this data. This is where you're going to find your host plant stuff for pollinators and things like that. So for pink lady slipper, we give a basic description. Where to find it: grows in acidic forests, usually under oaks or pines. It occurs throughout Maryland. Relationship. Bumblebees are one of the main pollinators of pink lady slipper. You can click on that bumblebee and it'll take you to the Bombus checklist where you can click on any one of these species to peruse even farther. You can get down rabbit holes pretty quickly and all of a sudden it's 2 o'clock in the morning. Yes.
Your source for that information.
Yeah. So that's me.
Oh.
Information how?
So,
So the information on it grows in acidic forests.
yes.
Yeah, that's all. That's all my knowledge of the flora. If we take information from somewhere else, we note it.
So for instance, habitat, I find that a lot of that information is in the Virginia Plant Atlas. So I use that in many cases.
Sure, that's fine. I mean, I think it's pretty common knowledge that pink lady slippers grow in acidic forests under pines and oaks, right? I mean, it's, does that make sense, Judy? Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I guess we could figure something out to borrow it from, but I mean, yeah. So this is the status and relationships for white oak. I just wanted to show you. So check out all the things, the host plant data for white oak, right? So there you go, database of world's lepidop, so a lot of this data came from there, right, for the host plant, Judy. You can click on all those to take you to the species pages, right? Yeah, it's pretty neat. So underneath that, we're back at pink lady slipper. We have a seasonality summary for the records, right? Pretty cool. So it gives you weekly, our first record is, the first week of April, right? And you can see that most of our records come from the last week of April, right? So if you go to thumbnails, you see right to the right of About Taxon, it'll give you all the photos, right? Now, the cool thing here is you can actually sort these photos. If you wanted to just see pink lady slipper fruit, you click fruits and seeds, and it will take you to all the fruits and seeds photos. If you just wanted to see green leaves with no fruits or seeds or flowers, you can sort it that way as well, right? This works for butterfly. So this is spicebush swallowtail. You can click larva and just get photos of the caterpillars, right? So if you wanted to just see what the pupas look like for this species, you could do that as well, right? So maps. This gives you a quad map for the species. Now remember, just because we don't have a record for a quad doesn't mean it's not there. That's very important. This is an ongoing thing. But you can do these quad maps in 2 different ways, linear and log. I don't necessarily understand it completely, but there's people that do that generated these maps. So this is the linear and that's the log, right? So it's basically sorting how many species are found. The color quality gradient is determined by different species counts between the 2 maps, right?
The question was year over year, or is it all years?
You can sort it by whatever year you want. You can. So seasonality, right? So you can click seasonality, you can get the big seasonality chart. If you just want to, you can filter by tag, right? So if you just want to see when it flowers, right? If you just want to see when it fruits, you can filter all this data that way too for your seasonality charts, right? Phenology. Resources. So I'm concentrating on plants. You can go to the Maryland Plant Atlas. If anybody's looking for speakers, John Hall gives an awesome talk on the Maryland Plant Atlas. The Maryland Plant Atlas shares the same database as MBP, but there's a lot of different functionality at the Maryland Plant Atlas, and John's an expert at it. Highly recommend talking to John if you ever see him in the field. He's just an amazing botanist. And like I said, this is a whole nother talk, but you can go to the Maryland Plant Atlas species page from there. You can also go to the Flora of North America, right? You can go and look at specimens. You can go for all the orchids. You can go to the Smithsonian's Go Orchid site, right? And you can search Facebook for any of our daily Facebook posts that we do on that species. So we want to give you access to as much data as possible. So with birds, any bird link, you get to go to eBird, right? Any moth, you would go to the moth photographers group. Any insect, you could go to Bug Guide and a bunch of other stuff, but we're just concentrating on plants right now. So Southern Blue Monkshood. Has anybody seen this plant in a while? This is an awesome plant. Very, very cool. I believe it's extirpated in Montgomery, but it's still extant in Garrett. Let's talk about tags. So you see under the synonyms, it says tags. It says endangered Maryland, S1, highly state rare. Do you guys know about S ranks? So S ranks and G ranks. The Maryland Heritage Program and all the natural heritage programs for every state rank species rarity using an S rank, okay? So an S1 plant means that there's 1 to 5 populations in the state. And I might get these numbers wrong, but S2 is 6 to 20 and S3 is 20 to 60 or something like that. I'm not totally sure. So this plant is an S1, which means it's 1 to 5 populations in the state. It's really rare, right? So what you can do is you can actually click on these tags, right? So if you just wanted to see what all the endangered species were in Maryland, there's your list, right? You can click the S1 and get all the S1. We have numerous tags. So we have like Garrett County only, there's a lot of organisms that are only found in Garrett County in Maryland. We have coastal plain only, Piedmont only, Ridge and Valley only, Western Shore only, Eastern Shore only, so this is where your non-native and invasive tags come into play as well. Kudzu, really, really exploding now. Yeah, I mean, it's growing up. I don't remember kudzu, but it's really, really come up in the past 20 years. On the Eastern Shore, at least. I don't know about, I know it's at Turkey Point and down at Point Lookout and everything. So you can click on non-native, right? It'll give you a list of the umptillion non-native species, but invasive's a little more doable, right? You can click on invasive. We have a total of 319 species that we've tagged as invasive. We use the Mid-Atlantic, what's it called? Judy?
Atlantic invaders tool?
Yes.
Oh.
So, we don't decide that on our own. But there's obviously a lot of invasive species, and it's important that people know what they are, right? So if you go to Explore and click Maryland Species Richness Map, it will take you to a map that shows you a biodiversity, all of our data, right? Now, remember, we have 23,000 species in checklist, but this map, there's only 20,000 species represented. Why is that? Yeah, so we can't map all of our species to quad level, right? So we have a lot of county level data. A lot of old records, we can only get to county level. For example, Spanish moss, native to Maryland. I think the type specimen was found in Worcester County, right? In like the 16 or 1700s, believe it or not. There's still extant populations of Spanish moss on Delmarva. Not in Maryland, but on Delmarva. So we don't know where it was in Worcester County. We can map it to the county, but we can't map it to quad. So this map shows 20,475 species, right? And what I think is, you can see we are very population centric. Most of our data is where the people are, which only makes sense. Yeah, so like this is Atkins Arboretum, right? So we have over 2,500 species from Atkins, which I think is pretty awesome. I work closely with Atkins. The Middletown Quad, that's where Mark Etheridge lives. He's a moth guy with thousands of moths from his home. So that's why that, it's funny. This is the Nassawango, right? This quad. So the Nassawango is one of the most species-rich places in the state. Finzel Swamp, right out here. Places where people go. Is going to be more species, right? That doesn't necessarily mean that the Princess Anne Quad doesn't have that many species. It's just that we don't have the data. Yeah, because there's nobody goes to Princess Anne to collect data except for the people that live in Princess Anne. Not knocking anybody that lives in Princess Anne. Yeah, so I think we're in the Sykesville Quad right now. So you can actually click on any of these squares, any of these quads, and what it will do is you can click on the view quad list and you'll get a list of all the species. So we have 22,514 records for the Sykesville Quad, right? Species for the Sykesville Quad. You can also hit who is the top 100 contributors for this quad. So Matthew Bizet and Tom Field are the top two guys. Tom's one of my best friends. He lives out near Marriottsville, so he gets around here quite a bit. But, the Solemns are right there, obviously, Howard County legends. So how do we get data from you? This is super important. Yeah, so I'm going to give a little bit of history. When we started this, that was always the biggest problem. How do we populate the database, right? How do we take your data and get it into MBP? When we first started out, we needed to find a platform that was free and easy to use, right? So we picked Flickr. At the time, Flickr was a free photo sharing platform. And within a few years, once we started that, we had a backlog of over 18,000 photos that Bill and I were trying to go through. Is not a sustainable way to go about things. And then COVID hit. And all of a sudden, we were able to sit at home and work on this full time, which was, I don't want to knock COVID. It was a horrible time, but we were actually able to get a lot of stuff done that we'd always wanted to. So Bill is a master web developer. He can code and he's just really amazing. So what he figured out is he figured out a way that we could use iNaturalist, right? And iNaturalist really exploded during COVID. Other than eBird, I think that iNaturalist might be the most amazing community science project ever. It is just a phenomenal platform. You can put a photo on iNaturalist and anybody in the world can view it. So when we were using Flickr, say Judy puts up a photo of an ant and calls it this, how am I supposed to know she's right? Because we're really particular about the data we put in to the database. We want to make sure that the data is correct. I am not an ant expert. Bill isn't an ant expert. So what do we do? There's actually an ant guy. Do you guys know Tim Ford? Tim is an amazing guy who lives in Columbia, I think, or Baltimore. He keeps the ant checklist for Maryland. So we would bombard Tim, and he's such a sweetheart. He never said no and always answers, but we knew that we were taking advantage of him, right? And it just wasn't sustainable. But now you can put a photo of an ant on iNaturalist and every ant expert in the world can look at it, right? So we have 5 or 6 people that we know are ant, experts that can identify stuff for us, right? So we figured out that we want to get away from Flickr and we want to use iNaturalist, right? So we developed the iNaturalist Maryland Biodiversity Project relationship. So how does this work? Is everybody familiar with iNaturalist? It's an app. So you can take a photo with your phone and you can download it to iNaturalist and people can look at it and identify things for you. Yeah, it's very cool. iNaturalist has a really powerful AI tool that can suggest identifications for you. It's getting better and better. It's scary good. It's still not perfect though. So I want to make sure that everybody uses the AI with caution still, especially next year is going to be year of the sedge, right? Yeah. Or right. Yeah. So I think that was announced at the conference a couple weeks ago that 2026 was going to be the year of Cyperaceae, year of the sedge. It doesn't do great with a lot of the sedges. So just keep that in mind. So this is a record of mine, New York ironweed, right? This is what a record looks like on iNaturalist. You can see the research grade up there. That means that at least 2 people have agreed that it's New York ironweed. For the purposes of MBP, research grade means squat. We don't care about research grade. Because if Judy, I'm picking on you, Judy. If Judy puts her ant photo up there and you can say, oh, of course it's that. And we're like, who are you? Right? Right. So what we've done is we have established a list of curators, of people we know have authority with certain things that fit our requirements, right? So if Judy puts up New York ironweed, I can go on and agree, and that record will automatically go into a queue for inclusion into MBP. So if any of our curators make an identification on your record, then it goes into a queue. It has nothing to do with the research grade. I want to make that very, very clear because that's the biggest hurdle that people can't get over with this. Research grade has nothing to do with inclusion into the MBP database. It's all about our curators, right? Yes.
The question was, do you just want observations from natural areas?
Nope. I want all data. So the white clover that's growing in your yard, that's That's doable. Go, if you have white clover in your yard right now, go outside and look. And if you see white splotches on it, that's a newly arrived moth that feeds on the leaves of white clover. Leaf mine. So there's all kinds of cool things that you can do in your yard, right? You can also, with INAT, annotate it and put whether it's in bloom. If you annotate that your record's in bloom, it will go as in bloom in the MBP database, right? But I'll get more on that in a minute. So here's my record, right? If you go and look at the bottom of the record page and it says this observation is featured at the Maryland Biodiversity Project, that means your record's in MBP. Okay, so that tells, if it doesn't have that, then the record's not in MBP, right? So when I log on, here's the homepage of MBP. When I log on, you see this 280 photos to approve. That's the queue, right? That's what the queue looks like. So this is interesting. I'm showing you guys the back end of this and how it operates, right? So somebody identified this handsome trig that's on our curator list that went into that 280 photo queue, right? Now, all I have to do is hit that blue button and it goes into the database. But I know it's a female, so I click female so we can sort this record by sex. I know it's an adult, so we know it's not larva, right? So we can sort it that way. If this was a flower, I could put in bloom. If it was in fruit, if say it's a persimmon tree with fruit, I'll put in fruit. If it's a persimmon tree with no fruit, I'll say no fruit, right? So we sort all this stuff out. So you can see how many ways that we can sort just this insect record, right? Male, sex cannot be determined, dead, adult, tendril, pupa, nymph, larva, egg, scat, tract, molt, construction, gall, plant mine, specimen, published, cultivated, mating, falling prey with prey. And all those change depending on what the photo's of, right? If it was a bird, it would have totally different things. If it's a plant, it has totally different ways to sort, right? So this is how we get the data that we need to make the populate MBP, right? And then once I hit approve, right? So if I want, so this is something else. If I want this photo to be on the website, I hit approve there. If I don't want this photo to be on the website, I hit approve but hide, right? Yes.
The question was whether curators or he applies the metadata.
Yeah. So on iNaturalist, you have the ability to do a lot of this for us, right? So if you put on your INAT record, say you saw a pink lady slipper, took a photo, it was in bloom, you put in bloom, it would come up in bloom on here and I wouldn't have to click it. Right? So you guys can actually do work for us if you like. We don't, it doesn't take me any time to do I can go through 280 photos in 10 minutes, 15 minutes. Yeah, if I see something that I don't think is right, mistakes happen, I can go, and what I would do, so if this handsome trig, if I knew this was really a southeast fall cricket, I could go back to the INAT record, change the identification, and it updates, right? So it's always goes back to what the last curator does on the record. Does that make sense? So we can correct ourselves, right? So this is what the database looks like, right? So we have a individual record number, right? For every record. We have a date, we have the county, we have the quad, we have the exact locality data, right? And then we have the link to the INAT record. If it's not an INAT record, say you sent me that photo of an orchid, I can put it in if you don't want to use iNaturalist. I don't always respond when people send me send me emails, but you know, if you don't want to use iNat, we still actually have people using Flickr. We still have our Flickr site up. But iNat's so easy. It really is. And people always ask, well, I don't want my house, if I take a photo of the white clover, I don't want that data to be public knowledge on iNat, right? You can obscure the data. And then we'll come and say, hey, can you give us permission to use your locality data? And you can give it to us or not, right? We totally understand that people want to keep their privacy. So you're going to someplace cool like Soldier's Delight and you take a photo of the rare gentian that's there and you don't want the world to know where it is, you can obscure that data, right? It's important. There's certain, I like to keep as much data open as possible, but I do obscure stuff, you know, that I don't think the public should know about, you know? Yes.
The question was, is some stuff being done automatically?
Yeah, obscured automatically. Yes. Yes. Some stuff. If you ever question it though, so not like there's endangered species in Maryland that doesn't automatically get. Yeah. So if you think it needs to be obscured, just obscure it. It takes 5 seconds, you know, it's just a click. I don't quite understand exactly how iNaturalist does that, to be perfectly honest. I always tell people, if you have a question about it, just obscure it. It's not that big a deal. And if we really want the record, we'll ask you for it and you can give us the location or not. You know, we will never be angry if people say no. People tell us no all the time. So why do we do this, right? This is a bronze copper butterfly. This butterfly was super common up until the late 90s. And then all of a sudden people started noticing, hey, have you seen a bronze copper around? Population crashed. All of a sudden there was no bronze coppers anywhere and people were freaking out. Luckily, we had a bunch of records from before the crash. Common species that become rare often lack data in conservation databases. Yeah, it happens all the time. Common species do become rare. And if we don't have that data somewhere, we're going to be in trouble. We were able to give conservation groups a ton of data to go out and look for this butterfly, and they actually found a bunch. Yes?
Question was, what caused the crash?
We're not sure. I have my thoughts, and they could be 100% wrong. So my thought is we mostly found these butterflies along roads in wetlands. And I think that herbicide use on roadsides killed, there's one plant, water dock, I forget the Rumex verticillata. That's the only plant this butterfly uses for a host plant. And if that plant dies in the roadside ditches, all of a sudden you can't see, these butterflies aren't going to be along the roadside. They could be farther back in the swamp, but we just can't see them because private property, etc. Right? So common species go rare. We need to keep track of common species. I want to hammer that too. You know, I mean, honestly, it's important that we keep track of where the ash trees were, right? That kind of thing. It's really important. And I'm going to end with my favorite photograph that's on MBP. So that's a bold jumper jumping spider. just a fabulous photo, right? It's awesome. There's awesome macro work on the site. So very cool. Any questions for anybody?
I was just wondering, you want the native, any plant, native and invasive or non-native pictures of just whatever exists?
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly. No cultivated material.
Right.
And that can be tricky sometimes, so iNaturalist is full of cultivated material. And we just have to sort through it. But yes, we want, so let's go back to your white clover in your yard. You could take a photo of the white clover every day, right? And you're like, well, why would you want that? Well, now we know exactly when bloom time is for your area for white clover, right? Does that make sense? Yeah, so there's always just the data that we can pull from just a normal photo is awesome, Yeah. Yep. Yes, ma'am.
So I've noticed that there's different pictures that are featured. How do you make the decision about what to feature?
Yeah, it's all just yeah, if it's an awesome photo, we put it up. But all photos can be seen when you go to the thumbnails. That has everything, the bad, out of focus, but identifiable photos. There's a gallery thing that you can click on the species page that shows you the nicest photos. But, so with like Pink Lady Slipper in the gallery, the nicest photos, there might be 15 photos, but we probably have over 1,000 photos in the thumbnails.
So you don't need any permission from anyone.
No. So if you can attribution, on iNat, you can make it whatever you like. A lot of people use Creative Commons. If it's Creative Commons, then we can use your photo with attribution, right? You can say only with permission, and then we'll ask permission, right? So
I don't say anything.
whatever your attribution is set to, you should check. But we never just steal photos, right? It's always, we always tell, who the photographer is and the link to that record on iNat.
And then what I seem to notice is that certain species tend to get incredible attention.
Sure.
So when you said that about common, I was like, who's going to ever look at this? Nobody. And yet
I disagree.
certain species.
I disagree.
Are you
Yeah.
still mining the data even if it doesn't get any other checks? You all might be using that
Yeah,
data.
the smaller majority, all the species that get neglected are the cool ones,
Uh-huh.
right?
Okay.
So here's to kind of go on what you just said. So I got up here early. I went to Browns Bridge for a half hour. I found a new plant that I'd never seen before that's an S1, and there's 1 million of them.
Wow.
Right? I challenge all you people that's listening here in the audience to go to Browns Bridge and see if you can find that rare plant and post it on the Maryland Native Plant Society Facebook page.
Tonight?
Well, no, if you go tonight, that would be awesome. I will look for your data. But seriously, that it's nothing that would be in danger of people posting a photograph of it. But it's a really super rare plant, and there's literally millions of it at Browns Bridge. So it'd be cool. Go to Browns Bridge, see if you can find this plant that is just the most nondescript thing you've ever seen in your life, and see if you can post it onto Maryland Native Plant Society Facebook page.
But what I can't get is how you're showing numbers, right? And numbers of, or maybe you're not. For example, the spotted lanternfly.
Sure. Yeah, we have
We
thousands of
find
records.
that everywhere, and
Right.
everybody's taking pictures of it right
Yeah,
now.
and we are adding dozens of records every day for spotted lanternfly.
Right, but what about the stink bug?
Yeah,
That's
so
still
you should
pretty
do brown
prevalent.
marmorated stink bug and the Asian ladybug and European hornets and all that stuff is really important. I would argue that the invasive stuff is almost more important to track.
Yeah, but
Right, so
but
we know.
how are you deciding what is a valid collection of numbers, if you will? Because if everybody's taking pictures of spotted lanternflies and only a few are taking pictures of the marmorated stink bugs at this point,
Well, we can only work with what we have.
right?
I mean, okay. Chris Fry, who is our state botanist,
Mhm.
uses MBP to get the word out on certain things. So if you were at the conference, I gave a talk on the rare, threatened, and endangered species of the Eastern Shore plants. And one of the plants I talked about was Lobelia elongata. I can't remember what the common name is, but it's a rare lobelia that only grows in brackish marshes, right? So Chris is like, hey, this plant hasn't been seen in a while. It's an S3, so that's 20 to 60 populations. I'm actually going to move this to S1 because nobody's seen it in forever. I think this is a good candidate for posting on the Maryland Biodiversity Facebook page to see if anybody's seen this plant.
Mm. Mhm.
Right. So we'll use, we get used like that.
Mhm.
And that's what we're here for. We have 30,000 people on Facebook a day,
Mhm.
right? Looking at our stuff. So it's a good way. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, I mean, I'm just
Yeah.
thinking about silly things like, say I'm nuts about spotted lanternfly,
Yeah.
and I go out and take a picture of every single spotted lanternfly that
Yeah.
I see.
Yeah.
I'm throwing off your.
No.
Okay.
Yeah. That's cool. If you want to be a freak like that, man, we'll embrace you. Yeah. Yeah. And so people, I understand what you're saying, but nobody's going to do that for one. I don't, but if you take a bunch of spotted lanternfly photos, that's awesome. Yeah.
Doug Boucher asks, do you distinguish between non-native and invasive species, since that's a pretty standard distinction in the scientific literature at this point?
Yeah, so we definitely don't consider all non-native species invasive. I think that's super, super important. Not everything that's non-native is invasive, so it shouldn't get tagged that way. I'm a firm believer in that. I know that people will argue that. I'm not going to do that tonight, but that's my stance, and it's our stance at MBP.
The question was, how do you establish when it
Whether-
crosses the line into invasive?
What's the organization? we shove that responsibility elsewhere for other people to make that decision.
Donna Ford Wentz asks, what is your funding source?
Awesome. You guys, there's a donate button. It's always such a hard question. I suck at doing fundraising. We accept donations on a regular basis. The donate button on the website is one of our biggest ways. We also have various foundations that have donated to the project that help us fund some of our bigger projects, like the morning flight counts. The Maryland Ornithological Society donates a lot. The Staffy Foundation also contributes a lot of money towards those counts and helping web development. Bill and I is a total volunteer effort on our end. We do now pay a couple part-time web developers that Bill has on payroll. You know, but it is truly part-time. It's nothing, you know, substantial. We often get asked, well, if somebody gives you a bunch of money, what are you going to do with it? And we can answer that question. But it's also, we don't want to get too big right now because, like I said, we all have families and day jobs and things like that. And it would take a fair bit of money for us to transition out of the private sector and into the 501c3 world full time. But if anybody wants to do that, if anybody has Bill Gates's number and he wants to donate, you know, 10 or $12 million towards us, we would gladly take it.
I have a question about plants that you would be interested in including. So I have native plants in my gardens, but I also have some that just plain suddenly show up on my property. So
Yeah.
for instance, Solidago patula, an S3, one day I noticed that it was growing in my garden.
Sure.
Now, does
Did it-
that count as a garden?
Yeah. So you get into those gray areas where my argument would be, well, how do you know that seed didn't come in?
And I don't,
Right.
that it didn't come in a
So,
pot.
you know, I would ask that you not include that just because we don't know the provenance of said plant. And once again, we get into gray areas here. Your white clover wasn't planted. We know that.
I
And
had,
a rare goldenrod that all of a sudden materializes in a yard that's well curated.
but
is-
it turns out that close by me, I did find out that there are some wild populations.
Yeah, sure. And once again, it's that gray area that we
Mhm.
can discuss it.
Yeah, but I think other people would be interested too.
Yeah,
It-
so you know, so we leave it up. We're gonna leave that up to you,
Okay.
and
So
then
for
I'll make
instance-
John Hall make the
So
decision.
for instance, I have Verbicina
Yeah,
alterniflora
Yeah.
that showed up not in the
Yeah.
middle of a garden bed next
Right.
to the street.
sure.
And that I have a feeling really did just come in on its own
Yeah, see, that makes more sense to me.
because it's a common plant.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have one unrelated question, which is sometimes when I'm using the website, it can take a really long time.
Yeah, so we experienced a major issue with bots. And once again, I'm the data guy. I don't understand all this, but we got hit real hard and it took us a little bit of time to figure out how to work around that. And I think Bill has a pretty good handle now on that. And I know we still get hit real hard sometimes. But I think the performance of the site has gotten a lot better in the past few months.
Okay, because I also noticed the same issue sometimes occurring with Maryland Plant Atlas.
Yeah, so right. So remember the Maryland Plant Atlas shares the same database as MBP. So I'm hoping that has gotten better over the past few months. Yeah. Thanks, Judy. Yes.
To clarify the data you would like gathered, just for my understanding. So like if someone planted a fringe tree in their yard that they bought from a native plant, no, you don't want that. Okay.
It's
Gotcha.
cultivated.
Cultivated. Gotcha.
I have no problem with people wanting to know the identification of their cultivated material using INAT since it's such a good resource since you're reaching out into the global hive mind. If you put cultivated material on INAT, you can click cultivated And that way we know that it's automatically, it's not something that we want. Is that, it's really easy. It's all right there. Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's really self-intuitive. I mean, it's not difficult.
So the clarification of the question was you can put it in, know that there other people know whether it's cultivated or not.
Yeah. So, if you lived in Chestertown on the Eastern Shore and you had Trillium erectum records from your yard, I'm going to go in and put it as cultivated. So nobody else will know, or so everybody else will know that this record is a cultivated material. So other people can make your record cultivated as well. Yeah.
And you know, I'm thinking like if you, there was a, I forget the name of it, there was a database where you could collect all the information that you had in your yard about all the plants that you planted. It was a way to keep track of your garden, right? And then that lost funding and then everybody lost their records. So
That
this has
stinks.
happened a bunch of times,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So INAT, you could collect all that data from your yard and you could click cultivated.
Yeah.
So it doesn't get funneled into
Yeah.
these kinds of natural
Yeah.
projects and
Yeah.
things where people are doing
Yeah.
research and all those other things.
Yeah, we're not the only people using INAT.
Right. There's lots of ways.
Everybody, all the major conservation organizations, all the major state conservation, federal conservation organizations are using INAT data.
Right.
So
Yeah. And I'm gonna add that, you know, there are projects, I've seen projects in restoration where they'll take records and say, here's what people have seen in this area, or they'll track bird nesting patterns
sure.
and say, we are not going to do this restoration at this time because of that. Like there's many, many
Yeah.
ways that people are utilizing this database,
Yeah.
just to give you an idea.
I'm just gonna say what I think you said and you should
Sure.
clarify.
Yes.
You said, yes, it's useful to put in that data that other groups may be tracking other issues. And so like someone may be interested in knowing that gardeners are trending to increase using native materials, but you would not be something you would pull in
Correct.
for the
And I would
biodiversity project.
And I would encourage you, if you know that the data, the material is cultivated, to market on INAT as cultivated. And that way we're not I shouldn't say wasting time, but we're not spending time going to your record and saying, oh, that's weird. Let me look, you know, and taking 10 minutes to figure out that, oh yeah, this is not, this doesn't make sense. It's cultivated.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Sure.
Is it possible that you have the list of the curators published? So, no, okay, it'd be cool to see.
So, I would, we can talk about that face to face.
First, I just wanted to say you and Bill are amazing. I mean, I just can't imagine the amount of hours that and dedication that you guys have put into. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
And also I was wondering, like the data that you guys have collected, I feel like is obviously so valuable. And I'm thinking of, you know, like with a change in climate, you know, the seasonality, like I could see that being really useful, especially moving forward. And in future, will there be, do you envision maybe making that data available to groups that,
It's all available.
oh, so you could download? Like,
Well,
I'm
you can't
curious, like, what
download
would
it,
feel
but so say you wanted to know flowering time for pink lady. You know, we've only been doing this for 15 years. So the longer we do it, the more substantial the data set will be for what you're talking about. But you can still go back and look at like how you can, if you know what the climate was for a certain year and a time during, you know, April of 2020, you can go back and look at the data from April of 2020. You can sort the phenology data, you know, to whatever time period you want. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So You know, we ask if you use our data that you at least say that, hey, this was from MBP. But you know, we get requests daily
Okay.
to.
So would there be a way, like for instance, for the native plant guides, we used the flora of Virginia for the bloom time, and that's pretty close. We felt, but it would be even better if for future guides that we could use Maryland data.
You would be more than welcome to work with us.
Oh, awesome. Thank
Yeah,
you.
no,
Okay.
that's, I mean, there's no point in having the data if we can't use it, right? So, and we're not the scientists. We collect the data for the scientists, right? And I know people will question that, but you know, it's you know, we want the data to be used in appropriate ways.
Margaret asks, where's the line between cultivated, escape from cultivation, and invasive?
Yeah, depends on who you talk to. And I know I'm kind of skirting the real question there, but if you talk to Judy, she's going to have a different answer than if you talk to me. And that's very true. I actually know what Judy would think about certain things. I've worked with her a bunch on invasive species stuff, but you know, so it really does come down to personal opinions for a lot of this stuff. I myself tend to think that many of the non-native stuff we shouldn't worry about, to be honest with you. Let's spend the money on kudzu and porcelain berry and not really worry about purple dead nettle, right? That's also labeled as invasive, which I don't think it is, but that's just my opinion. Not the opinion of MBP. Yeah, so tricky subject there, Margaret. And I think whomever you ask that question to is going to have a different answer. Yeah. Yeah. Plant native plants. Yeah. It's easy.
I believe this may be a comment from Karen. The question about skewing data by, you know, putting so many different sightings into iNaturalist. iNaturalist is primarily presence absence data to document diversity and location, and to determine abundance. Data mining as well as quality control and assurance is required by the researcher wishing to answer that question. Observers do not need to worry about the abundance question, although you could add in comments if there's something unusual, such as you took one photo when there were 75 individuals.
Correct. Agreed.
So when did the bug bite you?
Yeah. So I'm a birder. If anybody, you know, asked me what my specialty would be, you know, you know, that's how, and I'm also a lister. I keep track of everything. I really like spreadsheets. That's spreadsheets are my thing, right? That's, and I realized later on after we've been doing this for a while that I'm really good at bioinformatics. That's my thing, right? So working with the data, I have county spreadsheets and life lists for everything, right? So that's my, they call it the collector gene. Yeah. Yeah. So, real close to hoarding, but it's hoarding information and not actual objects. Right. So it's you can focus your mania, right, on nature. Yeah. And do cool stuff. So yeah, so I went to Browns Bridge and found a life plant, and that was awesome. That it was an S1 made it cool, but not as cool as it being the first time I saw the plant. Does that make sense? Yeah. So I'll go home and fill out all my spreadsheets tonight when I get home, putting in the new. And I'm serious. I want to see this plant on the Maryland Native Plant Society Facebook page.
Question was, are we talking the actual bridge on Browns Bridge Road?
Near the Willows on the Howard County side. I want to see how long it takes for that photo to get onto the Maryland Native Plant Society Facebook page.
Thank you very much. Wonderful talk, very interesting. And thank you for everyone who came and listened to this amazing talk.